Welcome back to Weems Motor Co. We got something cool to show you. Stick around. So us here at Weems Motor Co. don't show a whole lot of customer bikes that come in for services and things like that. But every once in a while, there is something really special, something really cool that I think you guys might be interested in seeing or learning about. And today, one of those motorcycles just happened to show up. What is it? Well, it's this. This is a 1954 BSA M33 500cc single-cylinder motorcycle from England. Now, BSA, you might have heard that before. No, it doesn't stand for Boy Scouts of America. It actually stands for Birmingham Small Arms. This company got their start as making weapons, guns, things for the British military, and they started dabbling into the British motorcycle market. And in 1954, they released this beautiful specimen of a 500cc. Let's take a closer look. BSA, standing for Birmingham Small Arms Company Limited. BSA was founded in 1861 for the production of firearms. The brand's motorcycle division was set up in 1903 and the first motorcycle followed in 1910. BSA produced motorcycles for both World War I and World War II. In World War II, they produced 126,334 motorcycles, all of which were M20s. Later in its life, BSA purchased Triumph Engineering Company Limited, and in 1953, BSA Motorcycles Limited was created by separating from BSA Cycles Limited. By the 1950s, BSA was the world's largest motorcycle maker, with 1 in every 4 motorcycles sold worldwide sporting the BSA badge. The company also enjoyed phenomenal success on the racetrack, with notable victories at Daytona and Santa Catalina. In 1954, BSA produced 14 different models of motorcycles. Now, within those 14 models, several of the models had other options for like racing and things like that. So a lot of motorcycles were produced by BSA. A lot of options came up that year. And most people will be looking at this motorcycle and saying, well, that looks like a B33 to me. Well, if you look at the engine numbers closely, you'll actually note that it says BM33. So essentially what this motorcycle is, in 1954, BSA took the B33 engine and put it in an M33 frame, which made this motorcycle available for those guys who like to sport sidecars. Yes, this motorcycle was made for the sidecar market. Some people call those side hacks, things like that. It's a really cool option to have something on the side of your bike where you can have an extra passenger. But the easy way to tell is when you look at the frame, you'll see little notes like this sidecar lug here, and there's several other mounting points throughout the frame where you would attach that sidecar. Beautiful motorcycle, beautiful specimen. Super happy to have it here at the shop, but it does have some issues. So when the customer brought this bike by and dropped it off, I started looking over it, and number one, first thing to do is to ask what their concerns are, because it's such a beautiful bike. And, I asked him, how long have you owned it? And he said, only 1 month. And that's a little bit of a red flag. Okay, it's a new motorcycle. He just bought it, and it's not making him happy. I asked, where did he get it from? Because it's so nice. Was it a museum? And these things cue you in. So Not all motorcycles at museums are riding motorcycles. Some of them are just static displays. They don't have pistons or crankshafts or things like that inside of them. So it's kind of scary when you're purchasing things like that. You want to make sure that you're getting something that you can utilize if that's your plan to ride it. So I asked him the information he gave me and showed me documents of the guy who built the motorcycle, the guy who restored it, and I asked the all-important question, have you seen it run? Have you ridden it? And the answer was no. He can't get it started. So we walked through the process of like, okay, what can we do to get this motorcycle going for the guy? Checked it, made sure it had a piston inside the cylinder. The clutches were acting really wonky. A lot of things that need to get addressed on this motorcycle. The center stand does not want to fully retract back up. Some cable issues, some long cables, some cables unattached. So we're just going to go through this thing and see if we can get it running for the guy. Take it for a ride, man. I'd love to jump across this thing and take it down the road and put my knees in the breeze on a 1954 BSA. So the first thing we got to do, we got to get that oil bath cover off, which on these it's called an oil bath cover. Most people know it as a primary cover. So we got to get that cover off, check out those clutches, see why they're sluggish and they're not engaging properly. Let's get the cover off. So one of the first issues the customer had when he dropped this off was that it was leaking. And really, to be honest with you guys, the leaks don't bother me so much because these motorcycles leaked when they put them on the showroom floor at the dealerships. They put pans underneath them right there. I've got pictures and it's pretty hilarious. So little leaks doesn't bother me, but you know, sometimes if the bike has been done in such a great quality, you would hope that somebody would address those things. What we discovered as we're pulling that oil bath cover off, primary cover, whatever you want to call it, is that all of the screws along the bottom were all loose. I'm talking not even finger tight, loose, and one of them was actually using a bolt with a nut on the backside, which is not correct, probably because the hole is stripped out or whatnot. But the biggest thing that concerns me is when I pull the oil bath cover off is inside there, you see that circle? There's actually metal shavings inside there also. And that's from the cush drive not being seated all the way. I mean, I don't know who built this motorcycle, but things like this shouldn't happen, whether it was a display piece or not. We need to make sure that everything is put together properly. And so we're going to go in and adjust these things. I'm going to go ahead and pull the clutches out of the clutch basket just to check them out, to see if they're old, used, if they're new, maybe, hopefully, possibly, fingers crossed. And so we can check those out, make sure everything's good there. And then we can get this thing all cleaned back up and get this torque down to the proper specs so we can get that oil leak stopped and stop that clutch from slipping. So I'm going to knock it out really quick, and then we'll move on to another leak that he didn't like underneath the sump plate. I'm not going to show that to you guys. It's just 4 bolts, little cover that goes under the bottom. We'll pull that out, clean it off, put a new gasket on there and seal that up, and then we'll get onto the ignition system to make sure that it's getting good spark and all of those things as we work our way up through and try to get this motorcycle started and go for a ride. Let's get back to work. So with any old motorcycle, you always find issues, and some of the issues that we found on this bike was finger tight nuts and bolts holding the oil bath cover on. The clutch push rod was put in backwards, which damaged the clutch adjusting bolt and nut. And then you find things like he was wondering why his center stand wasn't working properly, and you discover that whoever built this bike used a piece of all thread, which is not the right diameter nor the right equipment that you would want to use on this. Luckily, this bike being an old British bike, I have all the Whitworth bolts and studs and bends that we can scrap and get the things to work right. So, but I do have to order those parts, those things that are broken and messed up. So that's gonna call it a day today. So hang around, we'll be right back. Well, thanks for hanging out so far. If you are still here with us, make sure you jump down, hit that subscribe button. If you are not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to us right now. But as we're getting back on the BSA, let's be honest, it's been more than a day. I had to order parts from England and have them shipped across the big pond, they like to call it. But we're getting back on this. I did have the opportunity in those days while we were waiting for those parts to come in to go ahead and try to get the bike started, and I started it and it smoked like the freight train, and it kind of gave me a little worry as to how the oiling system is, because I just seen that it wasn't really squirting back into the oil tank. It was more like oozing into the oil tank. So I thought it best to go ahead, pull the oil pump out, look at it, and sure enough we found that the oil pump was binding. Clutch rod was not right. We talked about earlier that it was put in backwards. Well, it looked like they welded about 1/4 of an inch onto the end of that clutch push rod, probably to make up for that ball bearing being missing. So we went ahead, fixed all that stuff. We got the timing cover pulled off because I wanted to make sure that the drive gear for the oil pump was in good shape, which it is. So basically we got the new oil pump in. Something to know when you order new parts, make sure you inspect those things, because we got this oil pump in and it's top of the line. It's by a company called Hippolyte, and these oil pumps for these bikes are not cheap. After shipping, we're getting close to the $400 range. So I was looking at the oil pump and it was assembled incorrectly, so I went ahead and disassembled a brand new oil pump, got it put back together correctly. Now essentially all we have to do is get all those surfaces cleaned up, get them ready to go back together, and put that oil pump into the bottom of this thing, put the sump pump on, put that timing cover on right there, and then get this thing started. So I know this video is a little bit longer than my normal content, but I really wanted you guys to understand the importance of knowing what you are buying. Don't just go off of how pretty it looks, because just like that girl you took to prom, she's all done up and everything, but you know, after the makeup comes off, you might not be appreciating what you brought home. So that's what's going on with this bike. It's pretty, it's got a potential there. We just got to fix all those little issues. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the oil pump on there, get the timing cover back on, get this thing lowered down, and see if we can fire it up for you guys, and fingers crossed, take it out for a little ride. Let's knock it out. Now that we got that oil pump installed, got the timing cover back in there, got some oil in it, Now it's time to kick this thing off, and this is the interesting part of these motorcycles. Every motorcycle has what I like to call their handshake, what it takes to start them. So with this particular BSA, what you got to do is turn the petcock on. You have to tickle the carburetor, and then you're going to pull the compression release in, give it a couple prime kicks, getting that fuel into the cylinder. Then what you're going to do is retard the ignition, and then you're going to give it some throttle and put your boot into it, and she should fire to life. Once it starts up, then you advance your ignition, and it should settle down into a nice, even idle. So, got all that stuff done. We're going to check that out, make sure when we get started, we're going to look inside that oil tank to make sure that it is actually pumping oil as it should. And then we can throw the oil bath cover on there, make sure the clutches are adjusted, all of that stuff, and then take this thing out on the road. Fingers crossed, everything works as it should. It's an old motorcycle. They always throw curveballs at you sometimes, but hopefully we got this thing knocked out. So let's see if we can breathe some fire into this 1954 BSA. Riding on a 1954 BSA M32 500cc single cylinder thumper. This is what the really thing they call the thumper is. Like riding an old tractor, man. These things are kind of hard to kill, but we know the journey of this little bike and how beautiful it is and all the little issues. Well, after the last cut in that video, I found that pretty much all the clutches were worn out on the bike and had to replace not only the clutches, the pressure plates, the clutch basket, the bearings, all of that crap was shot. So now we have the bike out running and riding. Super fun riding little bike. I mean, it's a very European riding position where you sit up on top of the bike and your hands are strung down low, and really kind of just a smooth ride. I really like this motorcycle. There's still a few more things that the owner needs to address. Something going on in the gearbox with indexing. It's not wanting to shift too well. We know it's not the clutches because all that stuff's brand new. But other than that, I mean, I'm looking at a speedo that's not turning. So the lesson learned in this video, guys, is don't let your eyes deceive you. Do your research, study what you're going to buy, and then when you go to buy it, make sure you hear it run. Make sure you can take it for a ride, unless you want it to be a piece of furniture or something you just sit in your office and look at it and appreciate it. But now this bike is out on the road. It's not running optimally. I mean, it could be running a little bit better, but you know what? For what it is and the amount of money and the time spent on it, I can say I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it to let it go back to the owner, and he'll have to go through and work out the rest of those little issues. But nothing beats riding an old British motorcycle like we are doing today. So with that, we're gonna wrap today's video up. Thank you guys for hanging out. If you are new around here, jump down and hit that subscribe button. If you really like the video, hit that thumbs up, turn those notifications on, and let everyone know what's going on right here at Weems Motor Co. Peace.